And welcome back to AR Sales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am A.R. and today I am joined by C.T. Ortega, aka Caleb for the friends. He is a fantasy and historical fiction author, prolific. I mean, some of the titles: Asgard on the Hunt, Assassin's Odyssey, The Way of the Dragon. I mean, the name goes on. The man has 5 books coming out this year alone, 2022. This year alone. So I am more than ready to speak to this man, pick into his brain. Without any further ado, Caleb, how are you?
Life is good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're on.
Yeah. Happy with Zoom is pretty great nowadays. Yeah.
Right. Like I know that we had talked a little bit before hitting like recording, because people always have like I can't say always, but every so often when people come on here, they'll have that thing of like, oh, should we have talking points, things like that. And it's like, yeah, this is a casual conversation. Imagine I just met you at a bar and asked you all these questions. Only difference is this is over Zoom. So on the note of that, what is it that got you hooked onto writing? Right? Love of writing always starts from reading. What was it that really opened up your mind? Like, oh man, not only do I like this, but this is something I could possibly do myself.
Yeah. I think everybody's story is unique. So for me, essentially, I retired from the military about 2 years ago. And that's, of course, right when COVID hit. And they said, oh, you're going to have a lockdown. It's going to be, 2 or 3 weeks or, maybe a month at best. Right. And we had no idea what we were getting into. But I had this little idea, like, I better get a little vacation out of the way. So I drove out to Mount Rushmore. It's about an 18-hour drive, and I just wasn't listening to the radio. And I've never written before anything outside of like philosophy paperwork. So I'm big into philosophy. I love the concept of like fate versus free will, and so I would just write out ideas and my thoughts and things like that, but nothing published, not even with the idea of publishing at all, and no stories behind it. So on the drive, I'm not listening to the radio. I'm just cruising down the street, and this thought hits me. What if Zeus, who's this amazing prolific god, was to sit in a room with Odin, and he's in his own right completely different in every way, shape, or form, but he is equally as prolific. And you threw in Egyptian gods and all these different philosophies and the culture surrounding them. I just thought it'd be an amazing concept. And my first idea was like, I wish somebody would write something like that. I think it'd be great, because I had never done it, never thought about doing it. By the time I saw Mount Rushmore, I had already started to develop the characters in my own mind. I had already started to push the plot. So I then had to drive 18 hours back home, started to write. And again, it was literally about 610 days ago. And I could tell you that because I have written every single day since, and I keep a little tracker. And since then, like you were saying, I have 5 books coming out this year. I completed a 5-book series of that. I call it the Warfare of the Gods series. Book 2 is out. Book 3 comes out later this month. And I just can't get enough of writing. And from there, it just jumped into this story to this story. So essentially all 13, 14 books are in a shared universe, but many are standalone books and a couple series. So it just poured out, and now I can't stop. I don't know what to do at this point other than publish books.
Wow, that is so amazing. I mean, the prolific at that point, writing every single day. My God, I feel like at this point I have a timer, a tracker of like how long it's been since I last wrote. I feel like that's like the thing. It's like, when was the last time we had an incident? And I'm always resend that button. Like, God damn again, because just everything else. But one thing that I got really fixated on was the idea of those gods converging. Because I'm also a student of philosophy, huge, avid lover since I was a child, and same thing for history. I think they kind of go hand in hand, right? So it makes me wonder, since you're studying of the material in order to write these books, what do you think are the different philosophies pertaining to these gods? That's one thing I always like to think about myself, just like the difference between man as a society, as a group, just going from polytheistic to monotheistic, like the level of change in a society and how a person thinks about life, just from here to here is staggering. So like from your studying of it? What do you think had an effect on it? What do you think the different ones kind of like added to one another?
Yeah, and it's amazing how different and yet similar each culture's philosophy is when it comes to God. But there is some astronomical differences. So the first thing I did personally was, outside of do a little bit of research and study the cultures, I looked at some of the mythologies. First and foremost, it's always interesting to know that each god, particularly described almost in every land, tends to resemble the people, right? Like Odin and Thor do resemble a Norse Viking atmosphere, which is, I mean, not a coincidence. So when you look at that idea, Zeus resembles his Greek people, then it comes across where the more you study the people, the more you know the gods. And so what I chose to do is, rather than stay with the idea of who history has taught these gods are, because those are oral traditions passed down, I chose to really look at the people, their values, their concepts. And what I wanted to do was create a book series that there is no bad guy. It's not Thor is the bad guy versus Zeus is the bad guy, because if somebody who is Norse affiliated was to read it, I would want them to feel well represented. I would want the Greek world to feel well represented in the way that I'm presenting their gods. And so it's less of who's right and who's wrong, and more just different perspectives. So I do know, Norse is very fate-driven people. Greece is the home of democracy. So I implemented those ideas that Zeus is not, anything other than an elected politician, so a little bit of changes in how I created them, but trying to keep the essence of who they are. When you talk about Lord Shiva, who's Hindu, they're very esoteric people. Let the materialistic world kind of fade, and let's look at the deeper picture of things, where that's really not Odin's way. I mean, they are very deep and law-driven people, but they are also very, humanistic. If I feel this way, then I'm going to do this, and that can go in conflict with other cultures and other folklore. So there's so much similarities, and yet there's enough there to cause conflict between them. And so I had a great time, because as a philosophy lover myself, I liked being able to speak as a Norseman and promote it in a positive way, and then go to the exact opposite side of free will, and you can do things for the greater good of Greece and present that as well. And yet it's completely opposite, and yet it's so similar. And then that's what creates a lot of the warfare, essentially. So I just had a blast writing it.
My God, there are so many things that picked up just because I'm also like, I just love comedy, and just like always kind of like think of like the kind of the humor side and things. I immediately thought of like Hermes picking up your book and being like, "Hey, that's not this bad. What's going on here?" Yeah. No, but
I'm sorry to cut you off. The joy of it is looking at some of these mythologies, some of these stories. Like there's stories literally about Zeus eating his wife, and so I wanted to implement those, but also create the idea and the illusion that those are just stories. What I'm telling you is the real truth. And, so they kind of allude to a lot of these things that if you are a lover of folklore, you're going to pick up on. But at the same time, trying to recreate it something new. I mean, that's always the goal when you're writing. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the whole story of like how the pantheon was created, that Zeus like fed Kronos like a mixture of what, like mustard seeds and like something else. So basically, Kronos, the Titan god, just didn't like mustard. Isn't that something?
Right. And it's funny. Norse world is very open, in relationship wise and things like that. And so I throw in a lot of that humor where they just kind of go back and forth. And if somebody knows them, they're going to have a good time with it. As somebody myself who loves the philosophy, I like the idea that these two gods, especially Odin and Zeus, they do start taking a main role, really butt heads with these opposing views. And then also the Egyptian world is incredible, because they are so diverse. So you have like Osiris, who is the typical perfect Egyptian human being kind of thing in God form. And then you have gods with animal heads. And so that diversity and what they are, what would happen if the god of war of Egypt, which is, Sekhmet, meets the god of war of Norse with this Tyre, and who meets the god of war of the Greek world, which is Ares? What would happen if these three met and went to town on each other? And so that's kind of the questions that I like asking and then answering, trying to answer myself. So I had a great time writing that specific series. Yeah.
Man, I'm just loving that concept, just like the how storytelling and gods and religion, all these things like just blend together, and how it's just phenomenal inspiration for just, I mean, to me, I like sci-fi because it's like that thing that you can just let your mind go into something. Even if something is mentioned for a second about some random technology on another planet, you being the type of person that you are, if you like sci-fi, you can just right there, even if it's not rain, you can just, oh man, I wonder how that other planet looks like and all these things. To me, history has that same essence where you can just like sit there and be like, oh man, I wonder how many other things we don't know of and like all these things. I mean, how did a society go from having a god to everything, down to like minute, the god of luck, god of, god of strawberries, god of grapes, like, just every individual, and then how we go from that to no, one god of everything, overseeing everything. And even more so, that similarity thing that you said was just so interesting. It seems almost kind of obvious, but like, yeah, I guess there were no white settlers creating black gods, which is, it seems like, I don't know, I just had never thought about that before. Like,
right, and to add to it, it's always interesting, of course, that the culture creates the idea of what he likes or the god likes. But I mean, honestly, if we were to really take a step back and be very as non-biased as humanly possible, and looked within, even, I think a large percentage, the majority percentage of Americans today are Christian for sure, and we look strictly at the Bible, it becomes obviously clear the earliest man, Abraham, Moses, these people who were most would declare the foundational fathers of monotheism. They probably believed in, they were probably poly. They probably believed in multiple gods. Your God does this, but my God does this. It's clear they're not out there propagating the idea that, no, there's only one God. You're just confused. This is a much newer revelation, probably in the last, 2,000, 3,000 years for this specific group of people. Because, of course, there is, when you go to Hinduism, of course, they still have their belief that there's a multitude of gods. I mean, as many as there are people in some way, shape, or form, and then even some of the gods, the way that they understand them, have a greater blend together where there is a monotheistic twist to it as well. So it's interesting. I think we're all trying to figure it out, the questions out there, and I just decided I'm going to have some fun not trying to answer it, but I'm just going to have some fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the pantheon, Greek and Roman, right? You have Poseidon, which is what, Uranus in Rome. You have Hades, Neptune, and then you have Jupiter, aka Zeus, the three, right? And then you get into like the shift into into monotheism, and now you have God. But God isn't alone. There's a Holy Trinity. There's Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God. And then there's not just that. There's a chorus of angels, and the angels are 12. The same way there's 12 other gods, children of Zeus and Hera. So just, I don't know, like how things change, but like seem to be like so similar.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, honestly, the very first commandment in the Bible is basically, you shall have no other gods before me, right? Like that's one of the 10 type foundational commandments there, is that you shouldn't have another God before me. So just the concept is that he's not teaching, if he's not teaching so much that I'm the only God, he's teaching that I'm the God that you should worship above everybody else. That's one of the foundational beliefs. And so it's so interesting. It can go in so many different areas. And I chose to use the Abrahamic God in the Bible in the stories as well as as the main creator, and have fun with that idea. But it's so interesting because the Bible will teach, God sees all things, and then there is, written and understood ideas that Zeus sees all things, and of course there's Odin with one eye. Well, he sees all things too. And no matter which religion you go, that philosophy has grown where you can read the Bible, you could read Norse mythology and every other mythology, and they have these human attributes. They all have bodies, it would appear. They all are very human in some of the ways that they act. And yet when it comes to how we understand them and have conversations about them, the ones that we tend to be loyal to, well, that one is the all-powerful one. And it's just so interesting how we as humans adapt and connect with our God specifically. And to me, at least for myself, I've traveled, spending 20 years in the military. I've traveled, I've met, Chinese Christians, I've met, Asian atheists, and you just meet the conglomeration of people. And the truth is, there's 6 billion people in the world. There's probably 6 billion different religions and understanding of religions, because no two people have the same exact idea of who and what God or gods are. So I wanted to respect it in sharing a story, but also give the other side. Let someone who is a very fate-driven person maybe look at the free will concept and say, okay, there's some interesting points there. So I essentially try to hide a lot of philosophy, not my philosophy, but their philosophies in the book, and try to do it in the most respectful way. So at the end, without giving anything away, the hope would be, no matter what belief system you have, or no matter what philosophy you have, you kind of come away with a little bit from the other perspective, and like, okay, that was interesting, that was cool. I don't want any bad guys in the story. So it's really just, it was fun to kind of create that.
Wow. I mean, that whole dichotomy, why do you think that is such? Now, I say because it's a type of writing that I like. There's a type of content that I've always liked. The idea that there is nothing. I'll put it to you this way: it's something that I always have a conversation with my friends on. I don't like any content. Well, I can't say I don't like it, because I do like things I kind of just watch. But my highest form of entertainment is when I can sit back and pause something at any point and just actually have a full-on discussion of what just happened. That there are emotions that are just being told to me. I have to do a little bit on my part and diagnose what I've seen, what I've read, what I've experienced, and then mash it together into some form of conclusion. So
Right.
To me, the whole Harry Potter, hero kind of thing where there's a clear villain and a clear hero. I think those type of stories are honestly awesome, and I can be in there, live long and day. But there is just something to me there's just much more deep when you can actually sit back and be like, oh, who is there a good or bad here? Everything is gray. The people on this side that I may have a particular liking to are also doing things that are questionable, and the people that I might not, that to me I just read it as negative, they're also doing they're not that unreasonable either. They have their own philosophies and logics and reasons for everything that they're doing in their life and their society. And that right there, I just tip my hat off to you for perpetuating that, because that's the type of stuff that I really want to be reading and consuming, honestly.
Right. And because of that, I think that's a very interesting point, and I think it needs to be discussed more. Is, again, not to hate on Harry Potter, it literally is $1 billion industry there.
Literally.
But the idea that we're deeper than, and that we're deeper characters and we're deeper people living amongst each other, and that there are good glimmers within even the worst type of people, and vice versa, that good people can do bad things, and that doesn't create them to be bad people. I think that this is where storytelling should go, because this is the type of storytelling that our mind really connects to, that it relates to, that if I do something wrong today, it doesn't need to be my identity for the rest of my life. And so I love that idea of writing a push and pull concept. I'm going to push an individual away from you, but don't worry, because in the next chapter, I'm probably going to pull him back a little bit. I'm going to do something that's going to make him relatable and make you connect to him or her, whatever the case may be. And so by the end of the story, no matter what. And that it was, I'm a pantser writer. So I spend 3/4 of my book just writing and creating the problem. And then the last quarter saying, oh, what did I do? How do I get myself out of it? And that last quarter is where I'm trying my best to make whoever is going to lose relatable still. That no matter what, when that book ends, you say, okay, like, wow, the characters stick with you because you have that connection with whichever side. And to give Marvel their credit, when they created the Thanos character, I think that's what they did. Although he's a bad guy, no doubt about it. But he has a few points in his philosophy that kind of make you scratch your head and say, okay, that's interesting. And then the way that he, although not the greatest Father of the Year award, the way that he speaks to his daughters, that you could see the love there, and you're like, okay, man, like, is there a way he can live and get stopped? That little tug at your heart, I think is pretty great the way that they did it. And so and then going with each individual Avenger outside of probably Captain America, they all have their flaws too, right? So that push and pull concept, I don't think I have a character in any of my books that don't have that. You have to have imperfections. It's not just that the hero has to go through a trial. It's that they have to have a trial going on within them too. I think that's insanely important to be a good book.
My God. I think the first time that like my kind of like brain ever really picked up on that and kind of like really got drilled into me, I was watching the show, man, The Good Place. You ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it. I actually don't watch a lot of TV.
Oh, I'm a huge TV fiend. It's a problem. So it's a show where basically they get sent off to the afterlife, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what they find out is the afterlife that is displayed to them to be heaven is actually hell. And it's like what version of hell is in this show is actually like what you think would heaven be, but it's just kind of like low-key annoying. Like imagine if you personally like having your coffee like black, but for whatever reason they just don't have black coffee, and it's like, oh well, it's like sunny here, but little things that annoy you. That's what hell is basically. And when they find out this thing, obviously almost every single character, because it's obviously huge spoiler, I should have said that before, that when they find out it's hell, it happens I think in like episode 3 or 4 though. And the main thing is that you've been introduced to all these characters, and every character is clearly flawed, just as you said. But then you meet one character that actually seems like very, very nice and like has seemed to, like from the flashbacks you're given, to have lived a perfect life and just be a nice person and conscious always. And then what ended up happening is when it comes down, the realization came through was that the reason they were in hell, the reason that he particularly was in hell, wasn't because he was like a bad person, like he was stealing clothes, but like his indecision and like his just like anxiety. Like he let that like his own personal struggle boil down so much that it also affected the lives of the people around him. So while it wasn't like a malicious thing, that he wasn't a kleptomaniac, he wasn't a thing. It's that personal trial, just as you said, even though it was minute, he never conquered it, and it affected other aspects of his life and other people. And I always thought that was just so just right there, that like the idea that like, yeah, even like the most white knight of a character can still have that smudge. And I think that's the most important thing to like, again, it's to what I said about the discussion thing. What stays with you more? If me like we watch a movie and like I talk to you at the end, it's like, hey man, that was really good. You saw that good guy did that good thing and the bad guy did the bad thing. Crazy. Or me and you having a conversation of like, oh no, well this guy was clearly the one in the right, and the other one, and you're over there like, no, how could you say that? How could you? In the beginning of the thing, he did this. That to me is what lasts long. Is what creates long-lasting IPs, characters, stories. It's what makes fans crazy about you. It's what brings you up to the conversation when it talks about like favorite things you've ever like read. I think that is the source of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, the shows that I have watched, the ones that I enjoy and remember, they're that. And the classics, every single classic I could think of, when you go to Seinfeld, those are terrible human beings. And they just live together doing terrible things. But because they make us laugh, we love the show. And I love the show. I love it. The Sopranos, like that. He's literally a gangster that we just love. Breaking Bad. I mean,
yes.
the whole name of the movie or the show is that he broke and he became bad, and yet we're there like, please don't go. But he's killed numerous people. All this. It's so interesting that we can if done properly, it just really works. And one of my favorite, whenever I speak to somebody who's read the books, the first two series books, and now thankfully the third is coming out, so I have enough ARC reviewers where I can start asking questions. I always ask them, what character do you like the best? And I assumed it would kind of be, I don't have a main character, but I do have that kind of eyes who guide you through the story a little bit. And I kind of assumed, just generically, it was going to be that person. And I was shocked. I would say my first 8 people all answered 8 different people. And I just really, why him? Even I was shocked. Why this person? And to the point where 3 or 4 of them said, I hate this person. I don't want to give away too much, but I'll use Thor as an example. Someone literally said, I hate Thor. I just can't stand him. And the very next person, I just really connected with Thor. And I just didn't like this person. And I just, wow. And to me, that's when the realization, I always felt like I was a good storyteller. My kids will tell you every night as a kid going to bed, I would tell them little stories. But I'm not a natural writer, so I had to sit down, pen out these stories, read them 3, 4 times, send it to an editor. And I literally told my editor that I have a story here, but I need you to make it accessible. I need you to make it readable. I need you to make it something that people would want to read, take my story and run. And what I quickly learned was that this first series is extremely complex. If anybody had any gripes or complaints that I did read, it was that, wow, there's so many characters. There's just so much there. It's like philosophy pushing. And I'm like, I got lost. And the beautiful part is I had a literal 10-year-old email me this, page-long thing saying, I really like this character, in-depth analysis from a 10-year-old. I really like this character. I liked what you did with Jove, which is, of course, Jupiter, which is connected with Zeus. I made them different characters. They just happen to look alike, and they kind of act similar, but they're different characters. And I really liked how you treated this person, this. And so it really depends on the reader. Everybody is different, and I like that. I like that not everybody's going to like the book. Not everybody's going to say, this is my cup of tea. But those who are, I would say, similar to you and I'd say I've offered something that you can have those conversations with each and every character involved, because there is no one character that just grand sticks out as being the White Knight or, the Black Knight or whatever. It's always, everybody's gray.
I truly, I live by that fully. I just think that's the most interesting thing, where just the person that you're following doesn't always have to be, the GOAT, the best. Like I'm really fascinated with this idea of trying to create, and again, I haven't written it, but I really want to make a story where the person, the guy, the person that just shows up and does everything actually isn't the main focus, but it's maybe a friend of theirs. And it's just that feeling of just always being behind, of maybe trying, but just not being that person, and being a witness to it, and maybe overcoming your own insecurities and just kind of accepting how it is, but just that thing. Because we're so, how many times do you watch that that thing of the hero? It's it happens all the time, but rarely do you ever see the point of view of unless it's a comedy sense. If it's a comedy sense, they'll be a loser in front of you for a live long day. But I feel it's rarely ever shown. So right. in that idea, go ahead.
I have a few books actually, and because exactly what you're talking about. One specifically is coming out in September. It's called The Way of Dragons. And it is essentially one of the themes and storylines is exactly what you're saying. The hero of the day is that stoic soldier, that perfect guy who's always ready for that situation. And the main character is somebody who essentially, whenever that moment comes where the F's are activated, fight, flight, or freeze. One of those 3 are activated, he freezes and he doesn't know what to do. And so the hero jumps in, saves the day once or twice. And there's the way that it unfolds, we start seeing, well, it's even the hero that drive, what is driving that person, is sometimes it's impure, sometimes it's faulted. You know, they've lost someone, and that's what drives them. They have confidence issues, that's what's driving them. And so it's explored, but our main character is, you know, trying to get over that freezing type thing. And the other one that I'm coming out with, it'll be in December. This one is somebody who witnessed essentially David kill Goliath, right? And so here's the greatest underdog story ever told kind of thing. And he witnesses it, and that inspires him. So he attempts to go do this same thing, because according to the Bible, Goliath has 4 brothers. And so he attempts to do the same thing, and it does not work in any way, shape, or form. And for every Michael Jordan, for every David who beats Goliath, there are millions who did that exact same situation and failed utterly. What happens to those millions of people? What happens to the, you know, the best-selling author, we just mentioned her, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. Yeah. For every one of her, there's tens of millions of people who hit publish, are very excited, and sell 3 books. It's to them, their mother, and their grandmother, you know, kind of thing, and it doesn't go. What happens to them? Are they able to push through those events and succeed? Are they, maybe they don't succeed, but how do they live? So the Way of the Dragon, I try to play with that idea of you're not the best. How do you get out of that? With the other book that's coming, it's called Goliath's Brothers in December. It's that you are not the best. You're not that black or that white knight. You are a failure by all social norms. What do you do with that? How do you sit with that? Where does that go? And what does that become inside of you? And again, that's just that in-depth look at true characters and saying, like, let's just be honest. What I like doing is taking a character, unfolding something before them, and then again, as a pantser writer, just typing it out and letting them go from there. Where would they take it? And it's interesting because you could put two people in the exact same situation and yet have 2 totally different outcomes. So you could literally tell the same story, the same premise 3 or 4 times, and yet you'll have 4 different books because of the character, and characters make the book essentially, right?
My God. I'm just trying to think. So for the people that are not like aware of your work, what are the full bibliography? What are the series? Oh, yeah. What are like the different things itself? Just so we can promote it. You know, you got to make sure. I mean, if this hasn't sold you yet, I don't know what's going on. I'm sold. I mean, Jesus.
So I have 2 out of the 5 completed books done. The 3rd comes out in January. It's the Warfare of the Gods series. My name is Caleb Ortega, or the initials CT Ortega. You'll find me on Amazon, largest platform, so I love it. The first book is The Rider and the Throne. That's out. Sekhmet and the Curse, which is, of course, part of the series, that's out. And then the 3rd book, Asgard and the Hunt, comes out in January 31st. And then from there, once I was done with that series, I was exhausted. I mean, when you're keeping track of 30 characters and, you know, where they are and what they're going on, and again, doing it pantser style, so my brain is trying to maintain this, I needed to like just relax. So I created a book. It's called One Will Die. Very simple concept. Rather than have good or bad, why don't we have 2 good people who are in a tough situation end up having to go at each other? What if 2 protagonists have to go at each other? And so I created that very simple book. It's called One Will Die. Absolutely love it. From there, these are 2 teenage Viking boys. I said, okay, well, what's the opposite of that? I created an Egyptian book with 2 females. It's called Jewels of Egypt. And they're similar. They're in this trap situation where they just, one is trying to outsmart the other while the other is outsmarting and the other, and it's just kind of a fun play on that. And from there, those 2 books are out. My next book, standalone, is coming out. I'm very excited about it, actually. I have a prison group that I write to, and I send them all my books, and they have nothing but time, right? So they pick apart a book with finer detail than most readers do, and there's 15 of them. So they say it's my best book, so I'm very excited about it. It's called Assassin's Odyssey, and that's going to come out March 1st. And that's 2 lovers, Greek world. They're sent to go assassinate another king. And in Greek philosophy, they have this amazing idea about virtue, that living a good life is the most important thing you can do. And yet at the same time, what is the exact opposing view of virtue? Is that being loyal matters more than anything else, right? Because virtue means you judge other people. You really do. This person messed up. I've done a good job. It's about grading what type of human being you are. Where loyalty, it doesn't really matter. If the person messes up, I'm still going to be there for them, right? So what if one of the humans, he's a protagonist, he's loyal to a fault. The other, she's a protagonist, she seeks justice. What if those two clashed? And so I hide that little philosophy behind, I would say, like an Assassin's Creed video game type idea where these two people are just awesome. And they know how to take people out and have a good time doing it. So that book is coming out. And then again, I have a zombie book coming out, the dragon book coming out, the Goliaths, and there's several others. I'm actually currently penning a book called the Zodiacs, which is going to be the creation, the origin of the Zodiacs. And I would say it's the original superheroes, but just like anything else, everything is going to be black and white, or I'm sorry, everything's going to have that large shade of gray in it. So I'm very excited about that one. That'll be very early next year. But in truth, if you find me on social media, it's normally author.ct.ortega. You can find me anywhere as far as Twitter goes. IG, I'm pretty active on Facebook. And I have a book, I would say, coming out every 100 days is my goal for the next 5 some odd years. So yeah, they're coming.
My God, people, make sure to get these books. All the links, you already know how it goes. All the links will be in the description. The banners below us are going to have everything on there. Make sure to follow it. Amazon, CT Ortega. You'll find everything there. And as he said, Instagram, and all the links will be below. So I want to spend a little bit of the next few minutes just asking about motivation, technicals, right? You spoke about your ARC readers. You spoke about publishing a book every 100 days. How do you go about that work ethic?
So first and foremost, you are raised by a military guy. Then at 18, you join the Army and you do 20 years. It tends to give you a little bit different type of a self-discipline, I say. No, but the truth is, there is something, every writer is different. And that's first and foremost. If it takes one person 5 years to write a book, that it's not a failure. It's nothing wrong. That's what that person does. But if you're asking me particularly my method of success, it is simple. Writing has nothing to do with how you feel that day. You don't need to feel inspired to write inspired. You just have to write. You have to sit down and dedicate yourself to X amount of words. And for me, I have to write at a minimum 750 words. So it's really not a lot. But if you say 750 words in 80 days, well, I mean, 80 to 100 days, you have a 50,000 word book right there. That's a novel, and from there you can go to editing and all that stuff. But for me personally, I have made it a point to take care of myself. And it's similar to going to the gym. You might not want to sit down at that computer, but I have never, ever in the 600 plus days of writing left a computer and thought, well, that was a waste of time. I always leave the gym like, I'm glad I went. I'm glad I wrote. And sometimes some of my best writing has come from days when it's like, I really don't want to. I just sit there and you parent yourself in your mind and you get mad at yourself like, no, write a good story. You're going to sit down and you're going to write. And the next thing I know, some of the best things come out. And I would tell you my favorite chapter that I have just written was yesterday's. And the best chapter I'm going to write is tomorrow's. And it's because in my mind, the moment I write it, I let it go and start focusing. So what I essentially do is I have created this like insane level of discipline that I wouldn't push on most people, because I will be at dinners and talking to people. I'm so grateful I'm with somebody who understands that. I will be in the middle of a dinner and say, oh, I need you to text me, this person says this. And she just, pops on her text, she shoots it to me, and then we just continue the dinner, because it's always in the back of your mind. But the truth is, although some people may say it's a bad thing, we do it for our jobs. It doesn't matter if you're the president or you work at a high school as a janitor. It doesn't matter. You take home your work. You think about people that talked to you and did this and did this. I'm just doing it for stories that entertain, I would hope entertain people. So for me, it's sitting down. You write every single day. Once you have the story in a non-judgmental way, because it doesn't matter, never go back and edit. That's rule number 2. Write is number 1. Never go back and edit is number 2. And then number 3 is, when you have your draft, you are no longer a writer. You are strictly an editor, and you have to change your brain to do that in a non-judgmental way. Because I've met so many people that they're halfway through their books, they go back and change something, and next thing they know, they lost motivation, they lost their inspiration, because they read their work and they're like, it's not that good. But in all truth, it's not supposed to be. It's your draft. That's okay. It shouldn't be good, I would say, until at least draft 2 or 3, where you're like, now you're nodding, like, this is good. So you have to put on that editor's hat, really. And then from there, the 4th is find somebody. Find not friends and family. I think they can be the ultimate disappointment, depending on who and what they are. I'm grateful I do have some good family, but if my family is not fantasy readers, so why would I give my book to them just because they're family, and torture them to read my books and make them say they like it, right? I should go find fantasy readers. And so that's what I did. I took to the social media, started asking, shot out books everywhere, and I found my niche people that enjoy it, and that's it, right? Don't look back, edit like a mad person, and then find people and let them get that feedback, and then from there, let it go. Don't try to be perfect. Hit publish, call it a day. And if there's anything that pops up, you could change it. Thankfully, I haven't had to do anything like that, but so be it. If you trust the process, hit publish, on to the next book. Like, keep it rolling.
My God.
I would say this final point, I think it's always worth noting, is you spend 10 months to years writing a book, however long it takes you. That's your baby. But let's be honest. A reader will spend 5 to 10 hours with your book, put it down, and grab another one. It's your baby, not theirs. They can't care less. Most people don't want to hold another person's baby. So for you, it's like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. If you keep in your mind that that person's going to spend only 3 to 4 hours reading it, not that you're going to give it less of an effort, don't get me wrong, but it allows you to release it and just say, okay, it's okay if I hit publish and the person isn't, glowing about it, because this next person will. This person will. You got to find your niche. So just understanding that this is a business, and that, yes, you're going to put your heart and your soul into this business, but you can't expect everybody to treat your baby like you do, So you should have that business mindset. It's a balance there.
My God, I rarely do edits when it comes to like this video, but I'm gonna have to cut out that little segment, that's own little thing, because that was really motivational. I mean, as I said in the beginning, I myself struggle with that sometimes too, where I feel like I'm putting so much stresses on the other things, the art and like everything else related to the book that I'm not writing. And when I first started on this, I was to get my book out, I was disciplined. I mean, my logic was, my first draft, I wrote 18 chapters in 18 days, because like my logic was that it was like, well, you can do a chapter a day, and there's 30 days in a month. I mean, that's a book a month. I mean, that's at least a rough draft a month, and then edit it for however long you wanted. Like that was just like my logic of it, because I have an engineering background. I was just doing it mathematically. But when I got to the 18th day, I felt that burnout,
Right.
And like that thing that like I envision as being like the best thing ever and the most fun thing ever, just kind of like lost like passion for it. But I think it's because that like I just always set my goals a little bit too high. My goal per day wasn't 750 like you said. It was a chapter. A chapter is what, 5,000 to 7,000 words, and that was like the minimum that I needed in order to like feel right about the day. And if I didn't make it the on one day, then I would have to do double that on the third. It was just too much. I think that's a lot more realistic. It's like the whole meme that's like, you have like a steps with like, 20 ladders or a step with like five, and it's like which one's easier to climb.
And to kind of go with what you're saying is essentially you push yourself so hard rather than drawing back, you give up. And that's very normal, right? Because inspiration is inspiring, and yet if we know human nature enough, it's not consistent. We can't keep that. So I would tell you I was pretty motivated. My first 50 days, I was averaging like 2,500 words. And then I hit that road, I hit that block. And next thing I know, it's slowed. And I just knew if I can make it through this lull, you'll average out. They always say, if somebody's been smoking for 20 years, it doesn't matter. 21 days. If you can do something for 21 days, you can create it to be a habit. But the 21 days has to be something achievable. And so if you can write for, 500 words for 21 days, that 22nd day is a lot easier. But if you make it, 2,000, 3,000 words, it's not achievable. It's not something sustainable at the same time. And so the Army has a cool slogan, and I'm going to summarize it, but basically is slow is steady and steady is fast. And so the idea would be if you're moving slow and you get it down properly, your rhythm, it becomes steady. Now you're jamming. Now you're doing it every day. And that steady then becomes fast because it builds up. You get better, you get sharper. If you're trying to do something fast straight off the jump without fully knowing what you're doing, how your habits are, you're going to find yourself kind of burning out. And just the fact of somebody writing one book is I'm going to use the word beaten, not a competition, but they beat 99% of the other people who had that dream but didn't, because it is a very small amount of people who have actually written a book. Forget actually making it a career. If you're making it a career, I don't know anybody in any profession that has gone to work every day joyous to go do it. Like, you might like your job, but nobody goes to work every single day. But you go because that's your job. If we attack writing as the same way, I think a lot of great books will be written.
Yeah, that's definitely, honestly, these last 15 minutes are like something every aspiring author, writer needs to. I have a whole second podcast on giving tips, and I feel like that 15 minutes just invalidated the entire structure of that podcast, because that was on the money. It makes me even think of like when you watch, those like YouTube videos of street food in Japan or in Bangkok, and like you see the people like doing something, and you're like, how is that even possible? But they're like, you can't even see their hands. They're like, they're like making a dumpling or doing something in such a way. But it's exactly what you just said. It's because you're seeing them then at their comfort level. They could close their eyes and it would be the same process because they've done it. Like they know the rhythm. You go back to when they were 14 and learning it, they're over here learning slow. And then they developed steady, and then the steady became natural rhythm. That is a beautiful sentiment, a beautiful way of thinking about it. I cannot believe I've never heard of that quote like that idea before, but man, it is lamented now, honestly.
I would, in real life hits, right? I've lost family members these last 600 days. I've had COVID in my house as far as family members go, so you're taking care of them. I took that second dose of COVID, and I was actually knocked out for about 3 days. I was one of those that suffered. Some people are great. I've had the cold, I've had flus, I've had, just real life still happens. And I remember one day I was just extremely sick, and for one of the funerals, and life was happening. I went to my computer, I opened up my Word document, and I literally typed the word and I closed it up, and that was it for the day. What I got to tell myself is I wrote that day. I kept the discipline going. And so the next day, when again that kind of that inspiration hit again, where I was there, then I was able to pump back up to 750, 1,000 words, whatever it might be. But I did have you have human in days where you're just not capable, and in a blanket, sitting drinking tea and eating soup, you just can't. Fine, just do something that keeps your mind there, because it sucks when
I tell my kids this all the time. You're either going to do as a profession what you like doing, and not every day is going to be perfect, or you're going to do a job you don't like, and that's okay. But you take the income that you get from it and you go do what you like doing. At the end of the day, you got to do what you like doing. And I like writing, so why wouldn't I write? Even if I'm not feeling it, you'll feel it at the end. So again, not every day is going to be perfect, not every day is going to be great, but you got to stick to it. And for readers, the quicker you can get your first book or two out, and you get those responses from your market, and they're saying, this book blew me away. I've given it to my husband. I've given it to my children. I reread it. The moment I read the end, I went back and reread it from the other character's perspective or whatever. I mean, it makes you immediately want to go write 3 more books, and you'll almost be mad at yourself that you slowed down. It's very encouraging, because at the end, we are people as writers who are entertainers. And if you're writing and not getting feedback that, hey, this is a good book, I'm really enjoying it, you feel like you're writing for the wall, and that's very unmotivating. And that's what I meant by it's a business. People are going to read it for 3 hours. Don't kill yourself. Get that book out and go tell another story, and get as many stories out as you can. I would really push it, because at that point you're starting to get feedback. You're starting to get the F word. You're getting fans, like you're getting followers. It's insane when people are reading, when's your next book coming out? I want to be an ART reader. And that alone is enough to just really inspire a writer. And until you have that, you don't know it. You don't have that motivation behind you, backing you up, that I hope all writers can get, because it definitely serves you well as well.
My God, words to live by. Again, this is one of those things that I'm honestly gonna refer to this episode when anybody like ever asks for tips, things like that, because this has been phenomenal. I mean, philosophy and history, motivation. I don't know what else you could want out of an episode. This is like the candy bar that has everything inside of it. This is like a symphony bar, whatever you want to call it. Whatchamacallit. This has been phenomenal. I cannot thank you enough, CT. Ortega. Folks, get these books. Prolific. 5 coming out this year alone. You have series, you have standalone, everything that you could want, anything. It's a buffet. You can get a steak if you want, you get some French fries. Man's got it all. And if this talk hasn't blown you away just in his passion of speaking about his works, I honestly don't know what will. Maybe looking at some of the awesome book covers that I've seen, because I just went through his page, and again, make sure Instagram, check it out. He has all those book covers up, synopsis, just who knows what you can get on. And on top of that, my favorite part about Instagram and this like whole community is that you can read something and then like reach out to the artist. If you read it when you were a kid, you couldn't then email Stephen King, oh, can I be an ART reader? Well, I guess you could. You weren't getting a response though. Highly likely you're getting a response. So again, Caleb, I cannot thank you enough. Sorry, what did you say?
I would say maybe a signed picture at best, and no fault to him. I think I literally not read any of his books, but because of his writing ethic, he's one of my heroes. I've seen every interview under the sun from him. But
he's an animal.
I'm happy to speak with everybody, and I've spoken with some folks, and they have shaped my next book in conversations with them. They said, you know what, if you don't have enough romance in this book. I said, okay, I got you. And the next book was dedicated to romance, and not a romance story, because somebody's going to die. I got to have my action with it too. But I mean, those conversations with people who read and love your book, I think they better shape your characters. Yeah, for sure.
My God. All right. Again, we're wrapping up now. This has been such a phenomenal talk. All right. Is there anything that you want to plug? Any giveaways? Anything coming up for the future? What is the most recent book coming up? I know the most recent one that I remembered of you talking was one coming up in September. Do you have anything coming up before that?
Well, on the 31st of this month is Asgard in the Hunt. That's book 3. Of the Warfare of the Gods series. And then March 1st is Assassin's Odyssey. Those will be coming out. And again, I think you had a great point. Is if you can find me on IG, it's author .ct Ortega. I'm happy to speak with you. Number one. Number two, you're going to see all my books there. And then the third is, in all truth, I'm the type of person that if you're on the fence, if you're just, I don't know if I want to read them, I will happily gift you the first book of the series and just, take it if you enjoy it. There's 4 more coming your way. If you don't, high five, have a nice virtual day,
I like that. Have a nice virtual day. I'm going to have to start quoting that one. And you heard it first, coined here, A.R.'s Tales. Now, when you see like the meme of it and some TikTokers getting paid $1 million to say it, and I'm gonna be over here like, but again, Caleb, it has been just a complete honor, honestly. I mean, I feel like I almost needed this too. Just like hearing all that. I mean, oh my God, 100 days and a new work. I mean, yeah. Because I love writing, man. I'm right there with you. I feel like any person that listens to this podcast, most of the people on the Bookstagram, Book Talk, bookish communities. I mean, it's a deep love for this thing. So yeah, I don't think I'll ever stop, even for how much I ever have to take a break.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Hey, I feel encouraged myself. I'm gonna go write.
All right. Well, I cannot wait to see what you come up with. Again, this is the end of the podcast, A.R.'s Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I've been A.R., and this man next to me has been Caleb, the legend. Oh my God, I almost can't wait to get you back on just for the intro I'm going to give you, because I have some type of gray matter and brain parts somewhere. I'm going to have to clean up around the house now after this conversation. So I'm going to bid you and the viewers and everybody adieu. Check back with us next week when we have another conversation with another creator. And I love hearing the passion every week. I really do. So you already know what's coming to you. Catch you soon. Any words you want to say to the people?
No, hey, happy readings.
No matter what you read.
Happy readings, folks. Peace out.